Good morning, everybody. This is Wendy Walsh. I'm the Upper Susquehanna Watershed Coordinator for the Upper Susquehanna Coalition, and also the District Manager for Tioga County Soil and Water. I have the privilege this morning of introducing our speaker, and maybe I better make sure everybody can hear me first as I'm talking.
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so today we're kicking off Watershed Wednesday on a Thursday due to the holiday yesterday, but it's going to be a presentation by Jeff Parker, who is the Watershed Chairman for the USC, as well as the District Manager for Steuben County Soil and Water Conservation District. He's going to be talking about in-stream habitat through fish passage and some practices that they think they installed in Steuben and maybe even in some other counties, as I'm not entirely sure. I appreciate everybody for attending. This is the phase 2 of our mini sessions that we brought to you earlier in July and August of this year. I hope that you guys find these useful. We try to keep them short and sweet, so I won't take a lot of time, but it's an opportunity for us to do some trainings, get some word out on some of the projects and programs that the coalition and the districts are involved in, and let you know what's happening in the watershed since we can't get together in a formal meeting format. So I guess without any more or any further delay, I will turn it over to Jeff Parker to give his presentation today. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. And I hope you guys enjoy the presentation. Jeff, it's all yours.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate you all sitting in today. I just only have a short PowerPoint slide of some of the projects that we did this late summer and early spring. And just wanted to share those with you. I'm not an expert on fish passage for sure. We've trying to learn like everybody else is by doing some projects, and we were fortunate enough to find some grant monies to move forward with it. So it's a learning experience for sure, and I'm not the only one that's doing this within the watershed. So other people may have other ideas on how to go about this whole culvert fish passage issue that we're dealing with nowadays. The following projects I got all began because the Nature Conservancy here received a grant entitled Flood Smart Communities in Steuben County, and we selected the Cohocton River watershed to conduct culvert assessments and using the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative, the NAC or whatever guidelines. So we had 5 townships and a couple, 4 villages, and my staff and myself with Chelsea White's assistance, my technician, conducted about 79 culvert assessments throughout the watershed. The TNC and the district partnered, and we submitted a grant proposal to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for culvert replacements for fish passage. We had 2 separate roads in one township, in the township of Cohocton, and we did 2 through this grant there for culverts. The grant also allowed us to do a stretch of the upper Cohocton River stream habitat restoration that extended about 450 feet long, where we had an avulsion occur a number of years ago and changed the channel. And I don't have slides of that today, but that was also part of the grant. So working with the Nature Conservancy helped us because they are administering the grant, and that helps me quite a bit because we've got a lot of other grants we have to administer. So so far it's working out relatively well. So here we are doing the culvert assessments with myself, Chelsea White, Ainsley, who was a technician for me, who went to Cornell Cooperative Extension, and we had a TNC technician or a summer aide that was also assisting. So again, quite a few culverts were assessed throughout the watershed. quite a few culverts weren't in too bad a shape either, but it was actually, we had more culverts that were allowing fish passage than we were not. So we picked two sites for the grant that were the worst sites. Of course, this one is called Gardner Road. Slide to the left showing the outlet of the culvert. You can see how we're having a culvert is perched in the air, probably about a foot to almost a foot and a half, with a plunge hole at the outlet end right at the road shoulder. So this is why the fish passage was compromised on this culvert. And this culvert was only a 3-foot diameter size culvert. And so we had to look at how to change the capacity of the culvert, along with trying to get the fish passage to work in this situation. What we decided to do was we did some measurements upstream, and these are the upper reaches of the Cohocton River and minor tributaries that flow to the Cohocton. They have been surveyed by DEC in the past, and some of them do have brook trout and brown trout in them. So the biggest thing we had to do was get a stream permit, of course, because it's Class CTS stream. And so we were trying to meet the dimensions that were needed for the new culvert requirements through the permit system of the 1.25, the width of the bank full event, and then the embeddedness. This project, we ended up being able to use a culvert, which was a arched type culvert. A one-piece aluminized culvert was purchased because it was the most affordable and the easiest for municipalities and ourselves to install, rather than trying to do concrete box culverts and all that. This culvert pipe ended up being a six foot in height and 9.5 feet wide at the bottom arch pipe. When we measured the bank full event upstream of this channel, we were only getting about a 7-foot width in the stream itself. And we just couldn't get we wouldn't be able to fit any bigger pipe size diameter with the width and height because of the road cover in this situation. So we ended up using that size culvert. And it seemed to work out pretty well. So on the left-hand side of your screens, the inlet, you can see we have very, very little flow coming in at this point in time. And the outlet, of course, was embedded we ended up getting it in about 1.5 feet. So we actually ponded water into the pipe 3/4 or better up the pipe. Pipe was laid in almost dead level. So, and then of course we stuck 2 control structures at the outlet, kind of like a rock riffle or a sill or a weir, whatever you want to call them, because in Region 8, my fisheries guy, Pete Osterman, tends to like to have the pool remain at the outlet of the pipe if we can. Hopefully, because I don't believe this stream transports a lot of material, that pool will stay at the outlet, and the a rock sill or a rock weir or whatever you want to call it, I ended up having to put 2 of them in, will maintain that pool area into the culvert, and hopefully the whole area won't just fill in with gravel. This is the other project we did on Duesenberry Road. This culvert was actually a little bit bigger than the one on Gardner Road. It was a 3-foot squash pipe. Originally, we ran our calculations and bank full flow events, and we came up with the same size diameter pipe that we did on Gardner Road. So we ended up putting in a 6 by 9.5 foot bottom width culvert in this one. And the Fisheries, or Pete Osterman, wanted us to try to maintain the pool at the outlet, because that's actually where most of the trout were holding up, especially this summer when the flows were so low. There's not a lot of pools along or habitat along this small stream channel. So we ended up going in and actually netting out the brook trout out of the outlet of the hole, and we took them upstream and put them in a temporary holding area while we did the project. So my technician Chelsea and my operator Dave went fishing. I hope that was okay if Pete Osterman's on, I don't get in trouble, but we put them upstream for the time we did the project, and then put them back in when we were all done. Here we are tearing out the old culvert. It was a culvert that was 60 feet long. It was 3 20-foot sections. We ended up putting in a 65-foot culvert pipe to replace it. 2-piece culvert. So we had to actually band this one together. Believe it or not, we were able to get that culvert dug out, installed, and backfilled so the road was open the same day. So we didn't lose any road. We didn't need to close the road for a lengthy period of time. These culverts get installed fairly quickly, and they work pretty well. Here we are working on the inlet on the left-hand side. We're actually putting in, we're supposed to be embedding these culverts, so we tried to get a washed kind of cobbly gravel material, and we poured them in on the inlet end and pushed them in as far as we could. And on the outlet end, the slide on the right is the outlet end before the weir or sill was built downstream to raise the water level up into the pipe. So we actually backed water up into this pipe almost to the inlet end by the time we were done with our downstream structure work. So those were the ones through the that grant program. And then I was contacted by Region 9 Fisheries in Allegheny County to assist them with a fish passage project on 3 sites in Allegheny County. These were all native brook trout habitat sites, and they were actually located in the Genesee River watershed on smaller tributaries in the upland area. So fortunately, we were able to work with Region 9 Fisheries fellow who's sitting there with the waiting staff. My operator, Dave Hutchis, and Chelsea White is holding down the survey equipment. So she was instrumental in doing the surveying for us so we could make sure we could get the rocks installed at the correct elevations and back water into these culvert pipes. So this was what Region 9 DEC wanted to follow, the typical Engineers Rocked Riffle type construction to try to back water into existing culverts. We did not replace any culverts. This was all existing culverts, and we're basically trying to back water into them so that we had fish passage from the actual pool that was at the outlet of them. This is a Dave Derrick slide, who was instrumental years ago in doing a lot of this type of work all around the country. He worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, and we were able to work with him when he was around. We had a good time. He was a great instructor and very educational and fun to work with. So this is the profile basically the profile shows that we're building a rock riffle that is all locked together to the bottom of the stream bed with a keyway on the downstream end so that we don't end up losing the entire structure if we get any scour at the outlet. You can see that it's laid in relatively flat. This is a 20-to-1 slope. So that needs to be maintained so that we don't increase the velocities at the outlet end. And this would be placed downstream of the pool of the existing culvert. So on this project, we ended up going in and Region 9 DEC Fisheries shocked the fish out of the pool at the outlet of the existing. This was a driveway box culvert kind of bridge thing. And they shocked almost 60 native brook trout out of that hole right there that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. And we picked them, they netted them up, and we put them in these buckets and took them upstream and stuck them in some a little deeper pool so that they would have a place to stay while we were doing the project. This was a private driveway structure that Scott Cornett from DEC and Region 9 wanted to try to get fish passage incorporated into. On the left-hand side, you can see that it's quite an old structure and there's quite a drop. I think it was about a 1.2 foot drop out of that structure, and it's a flat bottom concrete bottom in it so that the fish have very little depth to jump into to swim upstream. On the left-hand or the right-hand side of the screen, excuse me, we had a little bit of a challenge. As you can see, we had a natural gas line that was sticking out of the bottom of the stream channel that we had to work around. Fortunately, this was the abandoned gas line. Although they had stuck a new gas line just upstream of it, 5 feet probably, which was only buried 17 inches underneath the bottom of the stream bed. So it was a little bit of a challenge trying to construct the rock riffle, because we actually had to bring the rock riffle down below this old exposed gas line so that we had a good keyway into it so we could hold all the material upstream, and so we didn't have any scour or erosion at the toe. So here we are installing the structure downstream. We're getting the keyway put into place and the rocks set in around that existing pipe to the left-hand side of the screen. You'll notice that we didn't do any dewatering at all on this project. The reason why is we all discussed, we actually had two fish and wildlife people there working with us on this project. A fellow by the name of Thomas Hoffman, who works in the Great Lakes watershed with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and a Betsy Trotter, who was actually the administrator of this, not the administrator, but she's the one we worked with to get this grant approved. She actually had the funds, and the Saltwater District in Steuben County actually applied for the grant money, and we're administering this grant. But anyway, everybody agreed that because of the length of time it was going to take us to do this project, that we wouldn't go to all the work to try to dewater it and then put everything back when we were all done. And that's probably one of the reasons why we shocked the fish out of the hole before we started. So we're on the right-hand side, we're working our rock weir up the channel. This one ended up being about 75 feet long, and we stabilized the banks on both sides. And we had to build it, you can see the height, we had to build it high enough to back water into that concrete box structure. So surveying it while we were installing it was pretty important. And we were able to build enough pockets in between the outlet keyway and all the way up to the pool so that the fisheries and Fish and Wildlife were happy that the fish would be able to get up through all that once it filled up with the water. So there it is after the placement of the rock riffle, and the water's backed up into the box culvert about almost a foot deep. The aerial view you see there is thanks to Melissa Yerrick with the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. She came the day that we installed all this and ran the drone around. So we got a drone shot of the actual project that was completed. You can see the private driveway bridge and the pool at the outlet and all those little pockets in between those big rocks filled in with water eventually, and the fish can actually make it up through those pockets to that pool and then upstream. This is what it looked like after we had it all hydroseeded. DEC Region 9 is going to go in there in the spring and plant some willow cuttings on the top of the banks to give us some buffering and some shade. But you can see how the water plunges down through in between those rocks and makes little pools so that the fish can get themselves upstream. So that project connected about 1.5 miles of stream upstream. We built a 75-foot engineered rock riffle, funding through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it cost us about $7,000 to do that project. We had it all done in one day. So the disturbance was only for one day, and then we were on to the next one, which was over on Spring Mills Creek, which is outside of Whitesville in Allegheny County, which is just across the Steuben County border. So this one here, you can see we have probably a 8-foot diameter culvert pipe that was put under the town road years ago, simply probably because they had to replace a bridge and couldn't afford a bridge. So we always stick a culvert in when we can't put a bridge in. And you know what happens, the velocities over the few years actually build a scour hole at the outlet end, and then we have a fish passage issue here because the fish can't jump into that low flow foot, maybe it was a little over a foot to get up the culvert pipe. So we went downstream, probably, I almost think it was 30 feet, and we built a rock riffle downstream to back water up into the pipe on this project. And this one was similar to the one I just showed you, where we ended up using rock riprap for the riffle. This one didn't end up being quite as long. This is a little shorter. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife gentleman, Tom Hoffman, stayed on site with us on this job all day and directed us while we were installing it. So it was nice to have somebody there from their staff to assist us. The farther right slide, you can see the water starting to back up into the pipe right after we got done, and actually got a little higher than that. So a successful fish passage project. This was the Spring Mills also, but this was a lower site downstream off of a county road. Allegheny County, again, put a large culvert underneath their road, and there was a huge pool at the outlet end where this willow tree was kind of leaning over. The landowner who owned this property told us that it's a great swimming area, and all the neighborhood kids go down there in the summertime when it's hot and dive off of the branches of that tree into the water, and it's almost 10 feet deep. And it is, because we stuck a survey rod down in there, and that hole is deep. anyway, that holds quite a bit of fish in there, and but they couldn't move from this area upstream because of the, again, over a foot drop out of that smooth bore culvert pipe. So we ended up going down below the willow tree and building a rock riffle down there on this one, on this project, similar to the other two. So here we are placing the stones in at the proper elevation, surveying along, trying to make sure we get it high enough so we can back the water in. We left the willow tree there because the landowner needed it so that the children could jump off of the branches into the water in the future. So this project took us more than one day, simply because we actually hauled this rock all the way from Seneca Falls, New York, because the Bath quarry no longer is making me riprap. 33 years and they no longer make riprap. So we have to get it from our lowest bidder, who was Seneca Stone, and we hauled rock to this site in excess of 100 miles so we could do the project. But we got it done. And this is after we had it all hydroseeded, and it was October. So the seeding's coming in good. You can see how the rock riffle's working. You can see we have water ponded through all those rocks in that riffle, so the fish can migrate themselves up to that big pool and then up the culvert. We connected 4 miles of stream, and it was a 125-foot long engineered rock riffle. And this one cost us a little more, about $16,500. That was my last slide.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. Hi, everyone. This is Amy from the Steuben County Conservation Association. We are actually co-sponsoring this project with the USC. But if anyone has questions for Jeff, you can pop them into the chat box, or we're a relatively small group, so if we wanted to risk it, you could turn on your microphone and ask your question directly. All right, we've got one that just came in the chat, Jeff. Is there a template available for culvert assessments, and is it through the DEC?
Say that again.
The question is there a template available for culvert assessments, like through the DEC or some other organization?
Yes, through that, shoot, I'd have to, if I had the individual's email address, we could send them the information, but it's actually a program, the Northeast Conductivity Assessment Program. It's actually run through Cornell, and there is a protocol for all that type work, which if Chelsea was with me, she's not, she could explain it all to you, but you actually have to go online, get yourself certified, and you go through a training program, and then you are able to do the assessments on your own.
Yes, and it looks like one of our other folks popped in information that it's through the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative.
Yep.
All right, perfect.
Probably Jared Popley would be a good one.
Yep, that is Jared, who's actually messaging right now. So.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Jared. We appreciate it. All right. Any other questions? All right. Oh. Another. Also, how is dewatering done at a site?
Okay, like I said, on the sites we did in Region 9, we decided that because of the type of work we were doing, because we weren't doing a lot of excavation, because we were actually raising the bottom of the stream bed up, and especially the slide that you see in front of you now, the size of the rock that we were using was placed in compression against each other, creating pockets and stuff. So the little bit of excavation we actually did was downstream, where we had to build the keyway into the stream bed. And that took us probably 15, 20 minutes. So the disturbance actually only lasted 15, 20 minutes. The rest of it was just placing these rocks in there to getting it up to the elevation. So we didn't actually do a lot of excavation. So there wasn't a lot of sediment sent downstream during construction. That plus, in order to de-water this site, you would have had to get some huge pumps and try to pump the water way down, and then hurry up and get the project installed. And it would have been probably more disturbance and more difficult to get the structure installed because you can't see what the water's doing while you're building it. You need to see what the water's doing while you're building it so you know you got the proper pockets built into the structure so that the fish can get back up there. So the other one that we did on Dusenberry Road, that was a 2-piece culvert. It only took us less than 6 hours to get that culvert excavated out and installed. And for that one, while we were doing most of the excavation work, we had a diversion channel built until we got the culvert installed. And the flow, because of this last summer, we were in terrible drought in that area. The flow wasn't very high at all. I don't even think it was running 1/10 of an inch by probably 3 feet wide when we did the project. So we just used the dewater channel on that one and got that installed in less than a day too. So dewatering is a difficult situation, and if you can get DEC to agree with you that temporary turbidity for long-term stability is the best way to do it without costing you thousands of dollars on dewatering, then sometimes you can get away with it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate you taking the time to share this with us today. And everyone, feel free to join us next Wednesday for our next Adventures in Watershed Wednesdays. I actually don't, Wendy, who is speaking next week?
So next week we have Cassandra Davis from New York State DEC and Alex Hua from SUNY ESF. They're going to be talking about best management practices on a watershed scale. And that'll be 9:30 on November 18th. And just a reminder for those of you, if you can't make all of the sessions, they are all being recorded. Amy is taking care of that, and then they are being put on the USC's website for future reference. So if you can't make something, you can always grab the recording when it makes or when time works for you. So that's next week. I hope everybody joins us. And Jeff, thank you for presenting. Really some great ideas and great projects that you and your staff and a lot of your partners have been working on in your part of the watershed. So thank you very much. And thanks everybody for attending.
Yep, thanks for attending.
All right, bye everyone, have a great day.
Bye now.